sportsradiodetroit.com.
Let's go out and leave it all on the field. It's going to start with us. We got to make plays in order for us to win. All you got to do is do your assignment, nothing more. Let's go. Playmakers on 3. 1, 2, 3, playmakers.
Matthew leans in, he's got it, wants to throw. Pressure comes set at the screen, got it to Riddick. Riddick to 15, Riddick 10, Riddick 5, Riddick end zone! Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He's to Abdullah, right side, got a hole. Abdullah 20, Abdullah 10, shakes the man at the 8, and dances into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! The action fake, he's gonna throw. Rhodes does, it is picked off by Lions. Coming back the other way off the deflection. Glover Quinn, back to the house. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! 38 seconds left. Bradford's got it on third down. Sets and throws. It is intercepted. Darius Slay's got it at the 30. Slay inside the 25. Matthews got it. Looks right. Throws. Caught. Golden Tate. End zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Barkley takes the snap. Back to pass. Looks. Rolling. Hit. Still alive. Now he's not. Going down. Sack. Back outside the 50-yard line. Kerry Hyder's got it. Backing up, looking for somewhere to go. Stafford's going to tuck it and run. Stafford at the 5, 3, 2, 1, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Oh, Matthew took it home.
Lions SRD on sportsradiodetroit.com.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lions SRD here on sportsradiodetroit.com. No, I'm not fooling you. It's not an April Fool's joke. We actually had an episode 2 weeks ago, couldn't air it, but it's fine. And then Death Cold 2017 took over for 2 weeks. And now I'm finally healthy and I didn't want to get Marty sick. But outside of that, what was sickening obviously was Sunday, and it was against the Steelers, so let's bring in someone from the Pittsburgh area. Marty, I know you don't really like the Steelers all that much, but man, how much bragging rights have been going on over there, or was it just ho-hum, the Lions suck, we got another win? What was the reaction after Sunday around Pittsburgh?
It was a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I mean, Ben, you've got me knowing pretty well over the past 2-3 years. You know, I'm always wearing my Lions stuff, always. That's no different when I'm out on the job, and I have a route that's close to the city. And I took a fair share of abuse, but then I also took a lot of people going, you know, man, that's pretty cool. You're repping your team, even though they just lost to our Steelers. That's pretty cool. So it was a little bit of both. I think a lot of people were genuinely concerned that the Lions would pull one off, myself included. I thought they would pull it off as well because they play better at home, it seems, and I got a lot of respect from people too, but I also took a fair share of abuse. But it is what it is.
It is, and I mean, here's the thing, because at least around here, and it's something I want to talk about because after the game I wrote about it, and it's something we've talked about almost every single week whenever we do a Lions SRD show, that the running game is awful. I mean, the running game doesn't break out of the top or the bottom 7 of the league. They don't even get in the top 25 of the league. And the offense, as we know, is predicated off the arm of Matthew Stafford. Well, there was an instance on Sunday, and everyone that's listening already knows where I'm going with it, where Dwayne Washington had the ball in the third quarter. He gets tackled at the 1, but as he's going down, no one's around him. If you rewatch the play, and I rewatched it about 6 times, no one's around him. Lions are down. He gets tackled. He doesn't even bother making a football move and extending the football over the plane just as he's going down, like really quickly, like as he's fighting for effort or something. Dwayne Washington does not do that. And it was something that really irritated me because it led to a cavalcade of disaster, basically. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's after that, the Lions, ran for it again, got stuffed. They threw an incomplete pass, decided to go for it on 4th down, which I wanted to get your opinion on that before I kind of blow my lid. Did you think the Lions should have gone for it on 4th down, or do you think they should have kicked the field goal to make it 13-12?
I didn't have a problem with them going for it. They showed they wanted to win. The play call was a little suspect, trying to go for a pass, but at the same time, they couldn't rely on the running game because there isn't one. You know, it's like watching Baltimore Ravens in blue with them trying to run the ball. It's embarrassing. But you can't rely on Dwayne Washington, who so many sports writers tout as the big bruising back in this offense. Well, he's garbage. Like we've had him for a season and a half.
Mm-hmm.
He's showing me nothing. Like I was real high on him when they drafted him. Once I saw what the kid can do, and he kind of looks like Michael Roberts. He just looks lost. Like I don't know if he's intimidated going out there because he keeps getting shuffled down the depth chart. I don't know if the Steelers were in his head. I don't know, but I mean he did not look good at all. Same with Abdullah. You know, I thought the first quarter, I kind of thought Abdullah was going to start ripping it up, dude, because he was looking really strong. I mean, yeah, he was only averaging like 4 yards a carry, and there's a couple carries he got, but I'm like, okay, well, they're moving, they're looking pretty good, and then he finished with 27 yards on the night.
Right.
I was like, what is going on? I mean, Theo Riddick, I think kind of gave me the proverbial middle finger because he was going up the middle and getting big gains, and that's not part of his game. So it was kind of a weird dichotomy that the running game was going through Sunday night. It was real strange. Yeah, but the running game is just it's god awful.
It is, and I mean here's what my line of thinking is, because everyone's like, you can't play revisionist history, and I completely agree with anyone that says that. First and foremost, right? It's not like, I'm going off the angle. Let's assume everything happens immediately the way it does. Lions kick a field goal, they would be within one. Then let's say Roethlisberger still finds, Juju Smith-Schuster over the middle. He scores. The Lions, battle. They get another field goal. So it's 20-18. The defense was actually playing pretty well. But here's the thing that irritates me, is that you forced your offense, who could not get into the end zone to save its life. And this is what, and this is where I put the blame, not on Jim Bob Cooter and calling plays, even though he deserves some of the blame. This goes on Jim Caldwell, because after his extension was announced, after the Lions went 2-0, they were like, hey, let's announce that Jim was actually extended a while ago. I think we're good. It's like, okay. The Lions they only have one win since he's been extended. Outside of that, the Lions, I believe, are 1-4 since that contract extension has been. And here's the thing, and this is why it was so frustrating, because in the fourth quarter, near the end of that game, your offense wasn't showing any signs that they could score. You had to settle for field goals. 5 drives, 5 field goals, that's all you had. And the thing was, if you had the 6th field goal, you have a better win probability. And the fact that Jim Caldwell cannot figure that out, because at this point, especially with Aaron Rodgers out, you need to accumulate wins. I don't care if you win 3-2. The Lions could win next week in Green Bay 3-2. I don't care. If you get wins, that's the bottom line. You have to find ways in the NFL to scrape together wins. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be even remotely good. You just have to win. And you had an opportunity to do that on a national stage. It would have been nice if they did it like how they did on Monday night in week 2, where they just looked unstoppable. But we know that that's fool's gold because the Giants are garbage. But that's what frustrates me about Jim Caldwell, is that he's obstinate. He's just, and that's just a fancy word for being stubborn. He's so obstinate when it comes to game management decisions that's what irritates me. And yes, you can look at numbers where people will tell you, oh, the risk is minimal, the Lions were still within 8. Cool. You're relying on the Lions that have not crossed the end zone to get not only into the end zone, but converted 2-point conversion just to tie the game late in the game if they ever did that. So that's what I don't like. But going and what you touched on, Marty, with Dwayne Washington, I think his time's over.
Yeah.
I think it's time that we see Tion Green. He's on the practice squad. They're similar running backs. He's a big bruising back. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It sounds like you want to say something.
I mean, even Zenner. I mean, that's one of I was waiting for you to finish with your thoughts on Caldwell. That's you're absolutely right with your analysis. And one of the things that frustrates me is his personnel decision. Like, to me, Zenner is. I'm not going to say he's the next Messiah or anything like that. I'm not going to go there. But to me, he's so much better than Washington. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can be that power back that we've seen in vulture touchdowns last year. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why Dwayne Washington is being dressed over Zach Zenner when Washington hasn't proven that he can carry Zenner's jockstrap, let alone have his roster spot. So, like, a lot of Caldwell's his personnel decisions are real questionable. Now, I understand if there's an injury or whatever, that's a completely different ballgame. But all of our running backs are healthy. All of our quote-unquote skill position, which I hate that term, but all of our skill position guys are healthy.
Right.
Why are you benching a guy that's clearly better and more suited for red zone work for Dwayne Washington, who hasn't proven anything? It just, I don't know. It baffles me.
No, and that's completely fair. I mean, that's where, again, I know a lot of Lions fans, they look back at the draft and they see a guy like Kareem Hunt out there that they easily could have had. Even Deontay Foreman, the kid out of Texas that's now with Houston. I mean, this is where you kind of bang your head against the wall because I'm not I never liked the draft pick of Jalen Tabor. I never saw the value there, but it's something that even if you swing and miss on Tabor, and it's way too early to tell if you did or not, there was still a clear plan for not drafting a running back that no one talked about that I could find outside of this show, because we gave the other side of what he has and what he's doing, and yes, what he's doing is frustrating and maddening. But I think you're completely right, though. I mean, I think it's time you have to sit Dwayne Washington and you have to give Zenner at least something. I mean, I know Zenner's not the biggest guy; he's not exactly bruising. But he's different than the other two running backs that you have. He is not Amir Abdullah. He's not Theo Riddick. He is a guy who will run in between the tackles. He is a guy who will do base. It's going to be a hockey term, and I apologize, but gets garbage goals. I mean, he's that guy that just hangs out there and just does gritty stuff. And it's time that you either, like I said, promote Tion Green, who is the big bruising back that people are looking for, see what he has, or see, like you said, Marty, see what Zenner has. Because at this point, it's absolutely maddening. Because you look back on Sunday, outside of Juju Smith-Schuster, none of the other Steelers that you think of when someone says, "Hey, who's on the Steelers?" None of the other Steelers that you normally think of did anything. Le'Veon Bell held in check on 25 carries, only had 76 yards. His longest was 8 yards. That's pretty darn good considering the Lions played two rookies at linebacker. You look at Antonio Brown, a guy who braked his game breaker. 5 catches, 70 yards. One of those was on one catch for 40 yards. Outside of that, very well contained by Darius Slay. I mean, it's just one of the things that this defense finally started to find itself again that we've seen out of the first 4 games, because the defense played well in the first 4 games. And then you don't see the offense get picked up. The offense doesn't do anything. I mean, it's absolutely insane that Matthew Stafford threw for over 400 yards and couldn't get a touchdown.
Yeah, against the number 1 pass defense.
Exactly. And you say that and you laugh, but it's true. And I think that's what's maddening, because now you're 3-4. You're 2.5 games behind Minnesota. And you're just thinking to yourself, what the heck? Which, if you're still listening, we're going to get to brighter things. But you have to talk about Sunday, because Sunday was just maddening in every way, shape, and form. I mean, it's just the way everything played out. Some people were saying it was a death by 1,000 paper cuts, or it's the same old Lions. I even said that. I don't like using that term, but it was. It was just the Lions could not get out of their own way. And that was the frustrating part about it for me.
And it wasn't even like when you say Lions could get out of their own way, typically you're thinking of stupid penalties and things like that. And it wasn't even that. I think they only finished the game with 5 penalties for like 40 yards or something along those lines. It wasn't anything major. It was weird stuff. It was 11,000 drops in the end zone. Like, what the hell was going on? Like, and we've talked about that. I mean, ad nauseum on this show. How those guys just drop the ball. I mean, it's part of the game. You're not going to catch every pass. I understand that. Everybody understands it. But good grief! Like, it was just like Ben. I watched almost the first half Sunday night because we all know I go to bed early.
Right.
But I watched the second half today. In preparation of talking about it, and I was just kind of like, what is going on? Because I mean, I knew the outcome, and I'm sitting there watching the game like, yeah, we're in the red zone, we're gonna score because I hadn't seen it yet, and I'm just watching it going, what is going on? The one bright spot in the offense aside from Stafford, and I have to tip my cap to him, is T.J. Jones.
Yeah,
like that kid showed up, like he kind of like, in my opinion, like he kind of has taken Eric Ebron's touches away, for lack of a better term, because now you want to see Ebron and Fells in their blocking, which is what I prefer out of this offense anyways. And I don't want to see anybody catching balls except for the backs and the top 3 receivers, because to me, TJ Jones, like, yeah, okay, Golden Tate did Golden Tate things. Marvin Jones showed up for work this week, which is, rare, but I mean, I say that with a smile on my face. We know he's a good receiver, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. But T.J. Jones, my God, I tip my cap to him because he made a lot of big plays for this offense.
He did. He stepped up. I mean, it was one of the bright spots out there. And the one thing that was funny, you talk about drops. Everyone's going to look at Golden Tate wide open in the fourth quarter, catches a pass, and as he's moving the ball to his outside hand, which you're supposed to do, as we all know, we all played Pee Wee football. So, you don't have to go that far back to learn this. That's when he just drops the ball. And you're like it's just inexplicable things like that. Like when you look at the drops, it was stuff like that didn't make sense. And then even late in the game where you expect someone to drop the football in Eric Ebron, he actually made a catch and brought the ball down into the red zone. And you're just like, okay, so it's going to be that type of game. It's going to be weird. That's fine. But it's just one of the things that, like I said, I mean, Sunday does not make sense, and it's not the end of the world either. And we'll get into that in just in a little bit. But the thing that was interesting, trade deadline was Tuesday. A lot of people made moves. I thought maybe at this point, I thought it would be wacky if Bob Quinn decided to trade a guy like Amir Abdullah just to see what he could get out of it. And then you see the Dolphins trading A.J. Ajayi to the Eagles for a 4th-round pick. I don't think the Lions are going to get a 4th-round pick for a guy that fumbles and a guy that's injured. So that was kind of interesting. But I think the thing that was the most interesting about Tuesday, because it seemed like it came out of nowhere. Teams were calling the Lions, calling Bob Quinn, and being like, hey, what do you want for Eric Ebron? And it makes you wonder, because everyone that's a national reporter, and you have to take their reporting with a grain of salt, because they're obviously not in the trenches like beat reporters are, but they say that there's a high value for Eric Ebron. And you hear this with baseball all the time, especially around here, because, hell, the Tigers did it with J.D. Martinez, technically. You trade a guy that you have an opportunity, if you want, to re-sign at the end of the season. Granted, he's working on an option this year, but you trade him to get some type of value, because outside of that, there's no value. And granted, last year Ebron did pick it up. He had a lull, but then in the middle of the season he started to play better. That can still happen for Ebron. But Marty, when you found out that Eric Ebron was in fact not traded, and you saw his tweet, which was very simple, it was just the hashtag #OnePride, were you happy or were you disappointed that Eric Ebron was still a Lion?
To be honest with you, I was neither. I kind of figured that was going to happen, and because we've talked about it before, we're not going to get any better at the tight end position. I mean, not that Fells has been outstanding, because I've seen him in a regular role. He's not consistent enough to be a quote-unquote starting tight end. He's just not. He's not that guy. Michael Roberts, again, clearly not ready. So I was fine with him not being traded, and I wasn't disappointed either, because it was kind of like, what were we going to get for Eric Ebron, really? I mean, I have to disagree with your assessment on Abdullah. I think we would have actually gotten something good for him, because running back's a weird position, and I think he's better than Jai, or Jai, however you say his name is. I think he's better. I mean, yeah, he fumbles, but at least he can pass protect, which is something Ajayi can do. It's just, and Ajayi can't stay healthy either. Well, no, let me take that off the board, because neither can Abdullah. But I was okay with him not being traded. The weird one that I saw, I don't know if you did or not, people were calling the Lions about Calvin Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, what? and here's the funny thing. Like, I have, and yes, this is fantasy football, so give me a second here. I have several leagues that I'm in, and one of them's, a free league. So I'm like, well, if teams are calling about him and he could possibly get dealt to a contender, I picked him up just as a fool's gold kind of thing, see what happens. And I kept reading, like, it was teams, I forget who it was. It was like contenders, like the Patriots, the Patriots, the Eagles, and I forget somebody else who was mentioned. Were like the obvious ones that would have been calling. And I was kind of like, wow, imagine if he ends up in New England. Like, how many of us would puke in our Cheerios if he ended up going to New England because of this trade deadline thing, which was kind of weird. But to Calvin's credit, he point blank said, "I'm done. I'm not interested in playing. I'm happy where I'm." And he said it multiple times. So I didn't think anything was going to happen. But like I said, I took a flyer on it just hey, a lawn dart throw, or whatever, however the phrase goes. But yeah, this trade deadline was crazy. I mean, I've never seen so much going on at once. Usually you get one trade at minimum at the year, if anything. Right. And this year there was a lot. There was a lot going on.
There was, and it was funny too, because when I saw people were starting to call on, for Calvin Johnson, in my head I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what Calvin's going to bring you. I mean, granted, yes, he's had a year off, but I don't know what he's going to bring you. Like, because the highest that we saw being let go, granted, it was the 49ers giving a second rounder to New England for Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't think the Lions would. I think that at most they would get is a third rounder, and that's even kind of like, that doesn't make sense as I'm saying it, because he's been out of the league for a year. Granted, yes, now he should be healthy, but he's also old. I mean, he's not exactly young. So you're basically
neither was Randy Moss when he went to New England, and look what he did.
That's true too. That is a very fair rebuttal, and I appreciate that. It's something that you look at it, and I mean, maybe you do get a third rounder, and if that's the case, yeah, I mean, the Lions don't have any reason to not trade the rights to Calvin Johnson. At this point, obviously both parties are done with each other. Be like, all right, if you really want to come back. And here's the funny thing I thought of too. If you're Calvin Johnson and you get a call from Bob Quinn or a 313-248 area code, would you answer the phone? Because they're not exactly on speaking terms with one another. So if he sees that number, he's going to be like, I don't know. And then he lets it go to voicemail. And then he maybe thinks someone's pranking him, because if someone calls and goes, "Hey Calvin, it's Bob Quinn of the Detroit Lions. Teams are calling about you, and just wanted to gauge your interest. If you're wanting to come back in the league, let me know. You have my number. Bye." Like, I mean, put yourself in Calvin Johnson's shoes. I mean, you would have to think people are swerving you at that point, because in all honesty, you'd have to then reach out to your agent and be like, "Is this true?" And he can be like, "Well, yeah, there's always feelers, but we don't know everyone's interest." So it's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just something that whole scenario was interesting. But What was really interesting was the Lions actually technically get a player back in after the trade deadline. If you are living under a rock, the Lions get their left tackle back. Taylor Decker has been cleared to resume practice. Now, don't expect him to play immediately. I mean, it would be nice if he could, but I highly doubt he's going to go on Monday, on Monday and start against the Packers. If he does, great, but I'm pretty sure, A, they still have to test out the shoulder because it's something that, granted, yes, doctors say, hey, you're healed, but how do you work under stress? Is that going to break? Because I always think of immediately with Charles Rogers, he came back and then immediately re-injured his collarbone. So it's something that, and I've been on record, I'm still in favor of him not playing the entire year, but I get why he's coming back. I personally expect him back at the absolute earliest against the Browns, absolute latest against the Bears. You allow him to get back in somewhat of game shape. The Browns are awful. Granted, Myles Garrett could still be there, and you'd have to go up against Myles Garrett, but I think Taylor Decker could handle him. But Myles Garrett's also been in and out of the Browns lineup, so you don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. And then, of course, you have Chicago. I mean, you could always, have him travel middle of November to Chicago. If not, he could start at the absolute latest Thanksgiving against the Vikings, which is a crucial game. And that's where, saying before, it's not all doom and gloom with the Lions for that reason. You're starting the second half of that schedule. Things should get easier from this point forward. You face the Browns, you face the Bears, you can get back into the win column in both of those games, and then you have Thanksgiving, which the Lions usually play competitive against the Vikings, and it's at home, so you never know. And then after that, you still have winnable games against the Ravens, the Buccaneers, the Bears, and then you have the Bengals and Packers, which are going to be interesting because the Bengals are still going to be in a playoff race. So you never know what's going to happen on Christmas Eve against the Bengals. You just don't. But it's not exactly like all doom and gloom because you do get Taylor Decker back. So that should help solidify the offensive line. You get things going. Hopefully you get a couple of wins in games that you're supposed to win. You're only 3-4. If you beat Green Bay, you move up to second in the division at 4-4. You hope Minnesota loses, but it's something that Minnesota's interesting because not only do they face the Redskins, but they have the Rams, both teams that are kind of improved. But they also are getting Teddy Bridgewater back as well. So you don't know what exactly is going to happen there because the Vikings are taking it very, very slowly with Teddy Bridgewater. They're not exactly saying he's going to be back and starting right away. They're going to ease him in. And, of course, with the Vikings at the quarterback position, Sam Bradford's still hurt, and you still have Case Keenum. And you did beat the Vikings before. So you just never – things can turn around quickly with the Lions. It's, like I said, not all doom and gloom. But when you heard that news, Marty, so I've been rambling for a little bit, what were your thoughts when you heard Decker's finally cleared to come back?
I got really, really excited because and this is my own stupid fault, I completely forgot about Decker. And, Ben, you've heard me say franchise-changing draft pick before, and he could potentially be one of those. Like, he could take over for a Jeff Backus, who was, let's face it, he's a Lions icon. And, Riley Reif was kind of a revolving door. Decker could be an anchor on that line for a long time to come. So you've got Decker, you've got Swanson, Glasgow, Wagner, and Lang.
Mm-hmm.
Decker comes back and he starts playing well. That's top 5 offensive line potential. That's something that can be really, really special, which is something we haven't been able to say ever. Years. It's been a long time since they've had a legit offensive line. So I got really, really happy, and I'd be okay with him coming back this weekend on a pitch count almost. Whenever he's cleared, have him come in, have Mahalik start the game, who I thought actually played pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
have him start the game. And, maybe late in the game where you put, if we're way ahead, then you put Decker in for a little bit. If we're way behind, you put Decker in for a little bit. Let him play in garbage time. Let him get the feel back for him. That's if the game's quote unquote in hand, which it could be. We don't know what we're going to get out of Brett Hundley. We have no clue. It's just I'm excited to see Decker back on the line, and it's I actually feel really bad forgetting about him because I was really excited when they made that pick last year, and I've completely forgotten about him. And I think that's what happens when a guy's on boomerang IR. You forget about him for because you haven't seen him, but. Yeah, when you tweeted that out this morning, I was like, oh hell, that's right, he's coming back. So I got kind of excited. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, yeah, I mean it's something too. With Decker coming back, he's coming back right at the right time too, because it's something that. I mean, Brett Hundley hasn't really done anything, and if you want to follow rumors, allegedly before Brian Hoyer did sign with the Patriots, the Packers called. Or tried to call for Brian Hoyer to come in and be their quarterback. Now, you're not doing that if you have complete faith in Brett Hundley. You're just absolutely not. And it's something that Hundley is. I mean, he's not. They're not doing what they normally do. Obviously, for again obvious reasons, but. He's 31 of 59, so he's basically a 50% passer. His longest pass is 26 yards. He only has one passing touchdown, and I believe he only has that one rushing touchdown against the Saints. So, it's something that Green Bay is beatable. And you hear the rumors that Aaron Rodgers may be back for the last game of the year, which if you fully believe that, then that puts more emphasis on this game, on Monday night, which it's going to be interesting because this is now the third nationally televised game that the Lions have, and then the next one that they have is Thanksgiving on Thursday because they always kick off the Thanksgiving slate. So. I mean, I don't know. It's something that I would ease Decker back in just because once he's fully ready, this offense is going to be different. I mean, it is. Decker, right when he played, he got better. The offensive line as a whole got better. The left side wasn't really a liability because he and Glasgow actually had a weird chemistry about them that actually worked and started to work the second half of the season. So, it's exciting. You get him back at a very crucial time. Because like I said, the opponents are not that great. You can get wins the next 2 weeks. I mean, it's Cleveland and Green Bay, and it's not a healthy Green Bay either. So, if you lose on Monday, then yes, feel free to panic. But it's not all doom and gloom. You have winnable games, and if Decker can get eased back in, holy smokes, like the second half of the season can be a nice playoff push. It really can, and that still follows the narrative that we all had at the beginning of the season. First 8 games are going to be rough. The next 8 games, not so much. You can recover, make up a lot of ground, and at least the final topic I'm going to pitch, unless you have one, Marty, is the Vikings themselves, because the Vikings are sitting at 6-2. They are a team that, quite frankly, is one of the better teams in the entire NFC, only because at that point you have the Eagles at 7-1 and the Vikings at 6-2 because the Saints, surprisingly at 5-2, already had a bye. Do you think water's going to find its level like it did last year with the Vikings, or do you think the Vikings can actually still be one of the better teams in the NFC? Because last year they started out hot. They were 5-0, and then they fell apart completely last year. Do you think that can happen this, the second half of the season, or do you think the Vikings are still going to tread water and still be tough and competitive?
Honestly, I think both, to be honest with you, and it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I don't think they're as good as they're playing right now. I don't think it's sustainable. Case Keenum is what Case Keenum is. He's a very, very up and down quarterback. Like, he has the highest of highs, but then he has the lowest of lows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we've all seen it. We've seen the wheels fall off of that kid before. I mean, he was 30 years old by the time he got out of Houston University. I mean, because of injuries. I mean, it was crazy. And he's not a young guy. Like, people tend to think, oh, well, he's still young. He's really not. He was 25 or 26, something like that, when he got drafted. He was a 6-year redshirted senior when he left.
Right.
So he was quote unquote old then. I haven't seen enough consistent play out of Case Keenum to be like, oh, you know what? I'm sticking with him because he's so good. I don't feel that way. Outside of Adam Thielen, I don't see any receiving threats. Laquan Treadwell has done nothing. Jarius Wright has done nothing. Kyle Rudolph, of course, but
right.
I don't know. But then on the same hand, like, they are playing well. They are playing better than people expected, and they're not doing anything special. If you think about it, they're just running the ball and playing strong defense. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't know. They're in my opinion, they're a middle of the road team that's just playing above their heads, and I do think reality catches up to them. But with the way they're playing, I also wouldn't be surprised to see them take this division. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't see them sustaining it, just because I've seen a lot of the key players, guys like Latavius Murray has fallen apart before. Like I just told you about, Case Keenum's fallen apart before. Some of their leaders on that team, I just don't see them staying consistent.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something, you look at their schedule. They have the Rams this week. Like I said, they have the Lions next week, and they're on the road against the Falcons, and the Falcons are just awful. But you still have the Panthers. That's going to be a hard game. The Bengals, hard game. Packers, hard game. And then you wrap up the season with the Bears. So who knows? By that point, the Bears could be better, but you expect them to beat the Bears. It's something that if they lose the next 2 games, the Lions are right back in it. The Lions, if they can get 2 wins, are right back in it in the NFC North, because you have 2 wins at that point over the Vikings, because they did beat the Vikings earlier in the year. Granted, it was an ugly 14-7 win, but it's something that if the Lions can get another win, having those 2 wins over the Vikings is going to be crucial, because again, you don't see the Bears improving anytime soon. So you expect 2 wins against them. And then if you split against the Packers, which, again, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be back at the end of the year. A lot of people are saying that he is. That is huge speculation. That's 2 months down the road. So we have no idea if that's even the case. But one thing that was actually kind of impressive, because you mentioned Latavius Murray, is the play of Jerick McKinnon. I mean, McKinnon, the past couple of weeks, has really accepted the bell cow role and has played very well, surprisingly. And it's something that, Dalvin Cook is still leading the team in rushing yards, but Jerick McKinnon is not that far behind, and their yards per average are very, very close. So it's it's interesting to see that McKinnon is still there, kind of helping Dalvin Cook keep pace, because he might hit a rookie wall. You never know.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be quote unquote that guy, but I'm gonna kind of discount what he did against Cleveland because it was Cleveland.
Right.
Being here in Pittsburgh, I see a lot more Cleveland games and highlights than I ever need to, but I see them, and Cleveland they're not good. Period. On either side of the ball. You take Myles Garrett away, what do they have? They have nothing. And and he's a rookie who's played 3 games. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's just I will discount what McKinnon has done because of against Cleveland, because Cleveland's terrible. But other than that, you're right. McKinnon he's been the bell cow. He's been really serviceable, and he's kind of making a name for himself.
He is. He's been that option. But I mean, like I said, outside of that, it's just. Granted, yes, Sunday was frustrating for multiple reasons. And granted, Jim Caldwell's your coach, so that's going to be the norm going forward. Jim Caldwell, in his nature, is frustrating. And Jim Caldwell coached teams don't really run the football very well. You can look at his stats. Most of his teams just pass very well and have very bad running games. When he was at the Colts, it was the same thing. When he was in Baltimore, as the offensive coordinator, it was the same thing there. So it's just kind of the norm. And the thing is, like, a lot of people, just going back to Sunday, were ripping into Jim Bob Cooter, being like, why are you running the football? Well, the Steelers' rush defense is 20th in the league. If you can't run against that, and if you're not attacking that, because that's technically a weakness, you're not really doing your job as an offensive coordinator. But granted, the Lions can't run the football anyways, but you still have to try. I mean,
but that's also the same fan base where if we go out and throw it 60 times a game, they're going to be complaining we're not trying to rush. So it's not,
no, that's completely fair.
You're banging your head off a wall, and it's just there's no. Listen, I love the Lions fan base because I'm part of it and I share their frustrations. But you're not going to make this fan base happy. Period. You're just not, because they love to grumble, they love to complain, and nothing anybody does is going to make them happy. So,
well, unless you win the division, because at that point you're raising a banner.
No, even then, because you go out and win the division. Well, they could have really won this division by 4 games. You're never going to make this fan base happy. It's disgusting.
You know what I could honestly see? Let's say the Lions win the division, right? And you hear, because I mean you hear this. People would be like, yeah, that's great, but you didn't win you didn't like beat anyone to win the division. Aaron Rodgers was hurt the entire time. Even though you hear the same people being like, hey, take advantage. Rodgers is down. Win the division. Go all out. That would be great. But at the end of the year, they'd be like, well, yeah, but you had 2 wins against the Packers, but Rodgers didn't play. So what does that really mean? Again,
yeah, you beat the Vikings, but Adrian Peterson wasn't there.
Well, right. Or like, yeah, and you beat Case Keenum. What does that mean? And you beat a rookie, Mitchell Trubisky. What does that mean? It's the NFL. You get wins. It doesn't matter how you get wins. No one cares how you get wins. You get wins because hopefully that turns it around. But I don't know. It's just something that, yeah. I mean, yes, Sunday was still frustrating. Don't get me wrong, and I'm someone that's still objective, and I was getting frustrated on Sunday because the lack of a running game. When the Lions got into the red zone, you could tell the Steelers were just going to be like, all right, we're just going to keep 4 guys down on the line of scrimmage, and we're going to send 7 back in coverage at the goal line. You want to see if you can score? I don't think so. So, it's something that alone is frustrating. But, again, it kind of is what it is at that point. But outside of that, I mean, Marty, is there anything else that kind of caught your attention this week that we may have or may not have missed?
Just a story that, Ben, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit on and off yesterday and today. Josh Gordon.
Oh, yeah, Joshua.
Finally. Look, and Ben, you said yesterday he does it to himself, and you're absolutely right. He does. He relapses. He's stupid because he just keeps shooting himself in the foot. But at the same time, like, this is one of those cases where it just, and I could be way off base here, but I mean, it just seems like Roger Goodell has kind of made this almost personal with Josh Gordon. And like I said, I could be way off, but I mean, it's just like anytime somebody does something, like anytime Goodell does something that people rail against, he just kind of goes, well, Josh Gordon applied for reinstatement. We're going to shut that down. Like, it just, that's just kind of, it's how it comes across. So I was glad to see today that, let's face it, the kid was smoking weed and he did other stuff. I get it. 3 strikes and you're out. I understand all that, but like, I'm glad to see him getting a final shot because it seems like I've seen the little video that he had put out there.
Wait, there was a video?
Yeah. He put a video out a couple weeks ago. It was like a little 10-minute documentary. I forget. I found it on the Yahoo Fantasy page, and I watched it. And he talked about his trials and tribulations, and he said about how the first time he went to rehab was a publicity stunt because he was like, whatever, I'll just do it just so I can get back to playing. But then he went in to talk about like life at Baylor, which what a train wreck that was, because like they were basically, I took it like they were kind of just letting him do whatever he wanted to do. Like if he needed drugs, they got it for him. Whatever he wanted to do, he was allowed to do. So he's kind of brought up in that culture. But this last suspension and this last time being out, like it seems to have opened his eyes, and he seems to have genuinely changed. Now, do I know that he has? No, I don't. But I kind of have to take him at his word. But yeah, if I can find that video for sure, Ben, I'll send it to you. But it was really interesting. Like it was kind of like he was walking. I want to say on a farm or something. He was walking with some reporter or whatever, and he was talking to them, and it was interesting. I tend to believe this kid. Like I think he finally gets it. Like he kind of understands what he has in his hands. Mm-hmm. So I was glad to see him get reinstated today.
I mean, I'll be honest. Like I don't care that much about it one way or the other. I mean, I really don't. We have not seen him play since 2014. I mean, that's 3 years. So, it's something that, I mean, if he can truly get, the help he needs and can actually make a comeback, awesome. I mean, that would be fine. That would be great. I just don't believe that he will, because he's had the opportunity, right, and he's gotten back. So, like, that's why I don't care that when I hear the news, hey, he's been reinstated. Awesome. Like that, yeah, that's fine. Do something with it. Don't throw it away. And if he ends up, as you say, Marty, if he ends up, quite honestly, coming back, playing, because he's going to be eligible on, after Thanksgiving, which, again, it's great because the Lions don't have to play him, which is fantastic. So
it wouldn't matter. They don't have a quarterback in Cleveland anyway.
Well, no, it doesn't. But, again, it's the NFL. You take any advantage you can get for a win. But it's something, if he can truly come back, play the rest of the season, survive an off season, and actually come back through camp and help, the Browns and actually, get better, then yes, awesome. That's great. I'm happy. Win NFL, comeback player of the year. That would be a great story for Josh Gordon. I just don't think because again, I think history repeats itself. I've been taught from going to school and getting my degree in journalism, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason, and it's usually tied to something. If he can truly beat those demons that, Marty, you said he talked about in this video, if he can truly beat that and get ahead of that, then awesome. Like, I'm right there with you. Great. That'd be great. Win the Comeback Player of the Year award. Fantastic. I'm not rooting against the guy. I just don't care to hear he's been reinstated, because in the past when he was reinstated, he immediately, I think it was a month later, went back into rehab. So it's a grain of salt, but I'm glad you brought it up, because, again, I know I can come off as like a nonchalant, not caring person, but that's totally not who I am. So it's something, it's nice to see. I see it with skeptic eyes. And if he can come back, truly come back, awesome. I mean, I am all for it. But we will be back we'll say next Wednesday, because that way we can digest if the Lions win or lose on Monday night, and hopefully this Monday night's like week 2 Monday night against the Giants, and the Lions actually just dominate, because that would be fun. And hopefully the Lions can, start righting the ship. But until then, over there, that's Marty Stouffer. I'm Ben Sloggy, and what do we say, Marty?
And we say good night.
Good night.